buy a car, you get an owner's manual. And it should tell you everything you need to know about owning and maintaining the car. Oh, like you should wash it frequently and put on a coat of wax at least twice a year.
It'll probably also tell you to change your oil and replace your oil filter about every 7,500 miles. Check your tire pressure, top off your brake fluid, and replace your wiper blades.
These regular maintenance jobs keep the car running smoothly, and it helps protect your investment.
You need to perform the same type of maintenance on your home. And just like your car, you want it to perform safely and reliably.
And you want to protect your investment, because the home is probably the biggest investment of your life. Hi, I'm JoAnne Liebeler.
And I'm Dean Johnson. On this episode of Hometime, we'll give you some invaluable preventative maintenance tips for your home.
Hometime is made possible by the Stanley Works of New Britain, Connecticut. For generations, Stanley's been committed to building quality tools and other products to help you do things right.
Every spring, you probably haul out the rake and start cleaning up around the yard and the house.
And probably when you feel drafts around your windows, you grab the nearest tube of caulk and start sealing things up here and there.
But you shouldn't be so haphazard about your home maintenance. You should have some sort of a schedule. Create a checklist and a timetable. That's what we're doing on this program. As you can see, we've created a general checklist and timetable for some basic preventative home maintenance chores.
We've tried to limit ourselves to home maintenance. We don't want to get off into diagnosing or repairing problems. We'll save those for other programs.
If we were talking about cars, these would be the general wear items that you read about in the warranty. Raking the debris and the stuff away from the house is good. You want to keep moisture and insects away from the base of the house, away from the wood. In fact, it's ideal to have a couple of inches of clearance between the dirt and any wood. You never know what you'll find. Think fast, Dean.
Well, things do wear out and have to be replaced from time to time. And caulk is a real good example of that. At least once a year, you should examine every place where you've got caulk and look to see if it's separated from the surfaces it's supposed to be sealing, or if it's starting to disintegrate. When you find bad spots, don't just caulk over them. Remove the old caulk and clean the area out before you apply new caulk. And make sure you make the repairs according to the manufacturer's instructions. Different caulks have different uses and different ways that you're supposed to apply them.
Crack in the brick, right side of the garage door, about 1/16 of an inch. One of the most important things you can do for your house is just keep a close eye on things while you're doing your regular maintenance. You're looking for any changes, like this crack in the brick here. If it stays the same from year to year, or if it gets a little bigger in the winter and just disappears altogether in the summer, it's probably nothing to worry about. But if it keeps getting a little bigger each year, it could be a symptom of a bigger problem. Like maybe there's some settling in the foundation under here. That might be something to have an inspector look at.
Now, we're going to mention this a lot. Keep an eye on things. It's the little things that will give you clues to big problems. And as a homeowner, you're in the absolute best position to keep track of things changing over time.
Like when I was raking around by the foundation, I was keeping an eye out for any cracks, any moisture problems, wood decay, or termite tracks.
And while I was up caulking the windows, I took a look at the roof, checking the flashing around the chimney and the vents. If there are any leaks, it's nice to catch them early before they cause damage to the inside.
A big part of good home maintenance is cleaning. And that's what I'm doing here on this siding where some mildew has started to grow. I'm scrubbing it with a solution of trisodium phosphate, or TSP. You can also use a little bleach to really kill the mildew, but you might want to test it first to see if it does anything bad to the color of your siding. This kind of care can preserve the finish on wood, vinyl, metal, even stucco.
Almost any surface can benefit by a good washing. This helps get off dirt and grease and leaves another debris that's difficult to get off by hand. I'm washing off some little cocoons that are up here in the soffit. Now, this is a pressure washer. I'm using it to give our hose a little more firepower. I'm just hosing off over the siding, but I'm careful not to drive water into places where you don't want it to go. Now, don't spray it up through the soffit vents or underneath the roofing. On a porch or deck, there are a bunch of little areas that should be cleaned off every year or so. If you take a closer look here, you'll see there are gaps between the deck boards for proper drainage. Well, these gaps can be blocked with the joists underneath, and they'll collect leaves and dirt and start to rot. So if you blast these with a pressure washer, your deck will last longer.
a crucial check. An improperly adjusted automatic garage door opener could lead to dangerous accidents. So you want to make sure that yours is running properly, and you should check it each month. The installation manual will tell you how to test your individual model. But as a rule, the door should stop and reverse itself every time you block it with your hands. Now the same is true if the door should run into an obstacle along the bottom. Now, we want to give you some tips for the inside of your house, starting with the bath and kitchen areas. If you've got ceramic tile anywhere in the house, you need to keep an eye out on the grout, which is the mortar between the tiles. The tile surface itself is pretty hard, but the grout is porous. It absorbs water, so it can get moldy, and can even let water pass through into the wall. So, periodically, you should seal the grout with a silicone grout sealer. And before you do this, make sure that you clean all the grout lines thoroughly. You can use a tile cleaner to get rid of any stain or mildew, and make sure that it dries thoroughly. With the sealer, you just brush it onto the grout and let it soak in. Then you need to wipe off the excess with a rag. You don't want it on the surface of the tiles. Until recently, you were supposed to reseal grout every 6 months. But now these newest grout sealers are supposed to last a couple of years. There we go. While you're at it, you might want to press against the wall, against the surface of the tiles, and see if any spots feel kind of mushy or soft. Now that could be an indication that water is somehow getting behind the wall and causing damage. That's when you want to call in the pros.
Well, the next item doesn't exactly fall into the earth-shaking category, but it's still a good thing to keep an eye on. Many faucets have a little screen or aerator cap on them, and these can get clogged with corrosion or other debris in the pipes. So to clean these out, you just unscrew them. Now that one's a little tight there, so I'll just take a cloth, wrap it around like so. A rag like this will keep the pliers from scratching the surface. I'll take this screwdriver, use this to get the gasket out. And you want to be real careful here so you don't ruin the gasket. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's too much debris in here. Evidently, these little slots here on the side have been washing most of it out. But at any rate, I'll rinse everything out here. Okay, then I'll just put it all back together again. You're more likely to find junk like this if your house has older galvanized pipes. They sometimes develop rust, and the rust ends up right here in the aerator.
A lot of people tend to ignore the space under their kitchen and bathroom sinks, but this isn't wise. One of the most common things that can go wrong here is that the shutoff valves can start to leak. So you want to keep an eye on these and examine them, maybe twice a year. If you see a little green crust forming around one, or if you see water stains or moisture on the cabinet floor underneath, you've got a problem. You can try to tighten the nuts with a wrench. If that doesn't work, you should call a plumber. It's best to take care of a problem like this early on, so you don't end up calling a carpenter for additional repairs.
Here's a refrigerator tip for you. It's a good idea to vacuum off your condensing coils. On our model here, the condensing coils are on the back, and the unit has wheels, so it's just a matter of pushing it out from the wall here. Some refrigerators won't have wheels. There you'll have to get a refrigerator dolly and pull it out. And then some condensing units will be underneath, so it's just a matter of taking off the grill. You can tell we haven't done ours in a while. Quite a bit of dirt here, as well as a few other goodies. Dust on the coils will make your refrigerator work a little bit harder. So by doing this a couple times a year, you should be able to save something on your electric bill. Now there is one other thing to watch out for. On these frost-free models, there's a little pan here underneath where the defrosted water goes and evaporates. Now, this tray just pulls out from the front of the unit. And you can see we haven't done this in a while. You should clean this out about every couple months or so. Now, you want to clean this so it doesn't start to smell or rust if it's metal. Let's see, what's this? Oh, sure enough. Wash with warm water only.
It's a good idea to check the toilet mount every so often. No big deal. Just see if it rocks at all. You see, the seal between the toilet and the drain pipe can weaken. That means water could leak out and cause all kinds of damage. So it's better to try to check this out and head off any trouble before it begins. This one is a little loose. So, on the side of the toilet, there are these little bolts up from the toilet flange. So you tighten down the nuts on them. There's a bolt on each side of the toilet. So, you just take the wrench and tighten them until they're snug. Give it another test. That's pretty good. And while you're at it, check the connections on the shutoff valve and make sure that there aren't any leaks.
Now, you may notice outlets like this in your kitchen and bathroom, possibly even your garage and basement. These are called GFCIs, or ground fault circuit interrupters, and they're important electrical safety devices, and they should be tested at least once a month. All you have to do is press this button that says test. If the little red button pops out, everything's working properly. You just hit the reset button here, and you're operational again. A GFCI can control a couple of outlets, so don't be surprised if the clock on your microwave's blinking after you get done doing this test.
See, what's all this stuff?
Oh, I found that behind the fridge. Recognize anything?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the 11 cents is mine. Drain pan and coil, those are done?
Done. Also marked down the faucet aerator and the GFCI.
Got it. Here are a couple of other appliance tips. Now, on dishwashers, you're going to want to clean out any food scraps that collect along the bottom. Check the owner's manual first for details, but most dishwashers have some kind of screen along the bottom. And this looks pretty good. Dishwashers are just one of those things that you want to keep an eye on. For instance, after you've run it, you want to check and see if there's any water that's pooled up on the front. While you're at it, take off the front panel. It's along the bottom every so often. And see if there are any evidences of leaks there. Again, we're just checking for any water spots or hints of water damage. Like we keep saying, if you catch a problem early, it may be a simple matter of replacing a washer or a gasket. But if you let it wait till later on, well, you may end up replacing the floor underneath it, too. Okay, drains and disposers. Now, some people think you should pour a liquid drain opener down the sink every month or so just to keep it running freely. But we kind of think you should avoid pouring unnecessary chemicals into your sewer or septic system. Besides, some of these chemicals can ruin the plastic pipes. If you notice that the drain's running a little slow, clean it out with a plumber's snake before it becomes a full-fledged clog. Now, if you have a disposer, the best way to maintain that is just to use it regularly. And every so often, grind up some bones or some ice cubes. Grinding up something hard cleans out any soft food that hasn't been washed away.
Besides some of the specific things we've shown you in the kitchen and bathroom, there are some other things that should be taken care of in other areas of the home. You want to make sure that you're maintaining your smoke alarms. Now, one tip to do this is to vacuum around the smoke alarm. The little sensors get clogged up with dust, and you want to make sure that you're getting that dust cleared away. You should vacuum like this about once a year, and at that point in time, it's probably not a bad idea to change the batteries. On this particular smoke alarm, it's hardwired, so we don't have to worry about that. And then once a month, sorry about that, maintaining your smoke alarm is by far and away one of the most important things you can do to ensure the safety of those that live in the home.
It isn't very glamorous, but some of the most important home maintenance you can do is plain old cleaning. For instance, regularly vacuuming your carpets and your rugs will significantly increase how long they last. And if you've got wood floors, here's an important tip. During the dry winter months, the floorboards may shrink a little, and the gaps between the boards may widen just a tiny bit. If any little hard particles get in the gaps, then when the wood expands again in the summer, there won't be enough room, and the wood could cup upwards. So keeping the floor clean isn't just a cosmetic thing, it also preserves the material.
You may discover that you don't have a GFCI outlet in your house, but that one of your breakers has an extra button on it. It's likely that you have a GFCI breaker, and these have to be tested the same way you test a GFCI outlet. You hit the test button, and if it trips, you reset it. If you do have a GFCI outlet or breaker in the house that doesn't work, make sure you get an electrician in to check it out. Now, some people recommend that you manually trip your breakers on a yearly basis. This doesn't tell you a whole lot about the electrical parts inside, but you are able to make sure that the mechanical parts are moving freely. The theory is by exercising your breakers, you make sure that none of the handles get stuck open.
Hey, what's going on out there?
And sometimes it can confuse everybody in the house.
Well, let's turn our attention to the heating system now. And what you need to do for your furnace depends on what kind of a heating system you've got. Now, ours is a gas forced air system with central air conditioning. And that's pretty standard for new construction around the country. Before you begin anything, you should know where the main shutoff valve for your fuel is. And ours is right here on the front. And in back here, there's a valve for the stove and for the furnace. And with any valve like this, you shut it off by turning it perpendicular to the pipe. When the handle lines back up with the pipe, the gas is turned back on. There's also going to be a main electrical switch, and by modern codes, this needs to be within 6 feet of the unit. Keep in mind, whenever you turn off the gas, you may need to relight a pilot light. We don't have to on this model because it's got an electronic ignition. Now, furnaces are an important and potentially dangerous part of your house. There aren't a lot of hands-on maintenance type things that an average homeowner can do. The best you can do is just keep an eye on things. On this furnace, the first thing we'd notice is that there's some rust around the unit. There's rust here in the tube that drains water away from the air conditioning coil. Let's see, there's some rust back here in the back of the unit at about the same height. And I also noticed there's some rust on the inside of the unit. And way back inside, there's some rust on the burner unit. This is called scaling.
So how does everything look?
Well, not so great. We got rust in the drain pipe here, some inside. You know, there might be a couple of different reasons for this rust. One might be that the water that condenses on the cooling coils of the air conditioning isn't draining away properly. Or maybe it's a combustion problem. But either way you shake it, now's the time when you should probably call in a professional. 2 dangerous things might happen. 1, any water that's on the loose inside the furnace could rust out important parts. And 2, if the water is condensate from the cooling coils, if it just sits around, it could breed dangerous bacteria.
There's a couple of other things that you as a homeowner can be aware of with your furnace. Listen for any odd sounds. There are pulleys, belts, and pumps, and sometimes these need oiling or adjustment. Look at the flame inside. It should be a nice blue color. If there's too much orange, it means it isn't burning right. And keep an eye on the vibration dampers in the ductwork. These can develop cracks and leaks, and that can cut down on fuel efficiency. Also be aware of any odd smells. If you suspect there might be a gas leak, don't go snooping around yourself. Contact the gas company. They're more than happy to help out on something like that.
One job you can and should do is check the air filter. And do this every month or so. In fact, the owner's manual will recommend how often it should be changed. Keeping the filter clean is important for a couple of reasons. First, if it's dirty, it means the air in your house isn't as clean as it could be, and it just helps the system run more efficiently.
Okay, now one more standard mechanical system, the hot water heater. Now whether you have an electric, a gas, or an oil heater, about once a month, you should drain a couple of gallons of water off the bottom of the tank.
Because the hot water tends to sit in the tank a while before it gets used, any rust that might be inside will settle to the bottom. So, by draining the water, you help get rid of the deposits. And this is a good idea because the deposits make the heater less efficient and cuts down on how long it'll last. Now, if your hot water heater hasn't ever been drained before, you may find the valve leaks a little when you try to close it back up. If you drain the tank regularly, this shouldn't happen.
Now here's a tip to get the most out of your hot water heater. Run the temperature as low as possible. A hot water heater will last longer if you run it at a lower temperature. Now most people find they can do what they need by keeping the temperature somewhere between 110 and 120 degrees. Of course, you have to balance this with the temperature you need to run your dishwasher properly.
Every hot water heater will have a temperature pressure relief valve like this one. And you should check underneath it to see if it's wet or if it's been discharging at all. And if it has, like this one, it's not necessarily a good thing. It could mean that there's a problem inside, and you should probably call a plumber. Now, there are different schools of thought about whether or not you should trip this valve. But we think it's a good idea to do it every so often just to make sure that the moving parts haven't corroded shut. The downside is that sometimes the valve doesn't close down all the way. It drips, and you end up having to replace the valve. And that's probably what we're going to have to do. But if we tested it regularly, this probably wouldn't have happened.
You notice that was dripping there, huh?
Yeah.
Then we'll have to call the plumber. On gas furnaces and gas hot water heaters, many times you'll see this little thing hooked up to the flue. This hood, or sometimes called a diverter, is there to make sure that the gases are being exhausted properly out of the home. Now, a way to test this is to use a little piece of tissue like this, turn on the unit if it isn't already running. Just hold the tissue up to the diverter. It should be pulling air from the room up into the flue. And you can see this one is working just fine. If it isn't working properly and air is flowing in the opposite direction, that means you could be getting exhaust fumes in the home. That's a real good reason to contact a service person.
Another basic fact to know about your water system is where the main shutoff valve is. It's usually right next to the water meter. This is handy to know, just in case.
Sometimes there are drains in a basement that don't get used very often. Say a floor drain, a utility sink, or a toilet. All drains are designed with a trap. This trap collects water and prevents sewer gases from entering a home. Well, if a drain doesn't get used very often, the water in this trap can evaporate, allowing sewer gases to enter the home, and it smells everything up. So a simple solution for this is to pour a little bit of water down the drain. It fills this trap up again, it takes care of the problem. Now, some drains have mechanical traps, but at the same time, a little bit of water won't hurt either.
If your house has a basement, you should just keep a general eye out for things every time you pass through. Check for any leaks in the plumbing. Check to see if there's any moisture on the framing or on the foundation walls. And if you've noticed any white deposits on the foundation walls, beware. When water leaks through concrete walls and evaporates, it leaves a white deposit called efflorescence. And this could mean that there's a larger moisture problem lurking around. Also, you should keep track of any cracks that you've noticed in your foundation walls. Little ones are natural, but if they seem to be growing bigger, that could mean a settling problem. Say, did you notice those cracks in the basement wall?
No, what cracks are those?
Down the storerooms?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I think they've been there a long time.
Oh, that was the first time I noticed them. Would you mind going down there and taking a look just to see if you think if they've gotten any bigger?
Sure. Well, the lesson here is the sooner you find out about something you don't expect, the better. You can save yourself dollars and inconvenience down the road. You may also find things that worry you, but you aren't quite certain how to handle them. Well, for instance, if you have a leak, you may bring in a plumber, and he may tell you, well, the leak's coming from the roof, in which case you then have to get a roofer out. Or worse yet, if the plumber doesn't discover the leaks coming from the roof, you may have a lot of plumbing done you don't need.
A good place to start is by having a professional home inspector look over your house. Lots of people hire inspectors when they're buying a house, but there are other reasons for having an inspection. A good home inspector, one that's not tied in with any contractors, can give you an unbiased opinion about what general attention your house may need, or how to cope with a particular problem.
There are several cliches that make the point we've been trying to make throughout the program. Well, for instance, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and a stitch in time saves 9. Now, these sound corny, but the message is still important.
The most significant thing you can do to keep your house safe, comfortable, and valuable is to spend a couple of hours each month on these simple maintenance chores. Thanks for watching our show. I'm JoAnne Liebeler.
And I'm Dean Johnson.
Hometime is made possible by the Stanley Works of New Britain, Connecticut. For generations, Stanley's been committed to building quality tools and other products to help you do things right.
Tomorrow, Jim Lehrer is the moderator for the presidential debate. Join KCET at 4 p.m. tomorrow for live coverage of these historic debates. Now stay tuned for the New Yankee Workshop.
A complete copy of today's Hometime program on preventative home maintenance is available on video cassette. The price is $9.99. To order this or any other Hometime tape, call 1-800-736-3033.